The 2020 census data for Kentucky as a state and for all 120 counties has now been finalized by the federal government. Kentucky's official population increased slightly from 4.3 to 4.5 million people. However, approximately half of Kentucky's counties gained population and half lost population. So Kentucky's legislative, senatorial, and congressional districts will all have to be redone to make sure all the districts are equal in terms of representation. Redrawing district lines is controversial work. Lots of different groups, special interests, and individual politicians all have their own idea of how Kentucky's final map should look. However, with us today is a man who will play a key role in shaping and approving the official final map. We welcome Senate President Robert Stivers of Manchester, who currently represents Clay, Knox, Owsley, Lee, Whitley, and Wolfe counties. President Stivers, thanks for joining us today. Glad to have you with us.
Good to be here, Jay.
So this is not exactly your first rodeo in the redistricting process. Tell us about your past experience in redistricting.
Well, I actually came in after redistricting in 1995. The redistricting was in 95. I ran in 96, so I was very aware of what happened. The old district was Clay, Knox, that we sit in, was Clay, Knox, Laurel, and Leslie. And then all of a sudden it became Leslie, Clay, Owsley, Lee, Wolfe, Menifee, Rowan, and Magoffin County, which is not very compact and not really good roads to get there. So that was the first experience. In 2002 was the second, and my district shifted again in 2013, but all after the 10-year census count.
Right.
It was just a matter of some redistricting plans got thrown out of court. So basically after the 210, the 220, well, the 2000, the 210, and 220 now, we have to do redistricting. Hopefully we'll get it done this year.
So why does redistricting even matter at all to an average voter? What does it mean to them?
A lot of people aren't aware of what it means, but it will mean who your state senator will be, it will mean who your state representative will be, and it will mean who your United States congressman will be it Hal Rogers, Andy Barr, who has some area contiguous to this, or Jamie Comer. Those are the three that I think touch Congressman Rogers' district and where his district will sit.
Okay. You also talked about that special districting and redistricting can sometimes cause interesting things to happen in cities. And sometimes cities are split up. London was split up. I think there's several other examples throughout the state in western Kentucky where they split towns, Glasgow being one. That's called cracking, am I right?
Well, cracking is generally a term putting on that you're looking at minority representation, that you don't want to pack to where there is a minority, only one minority district, or cracked that you dilute their voting, but that can also be applied to larger counties. And the reason is we have competing constitutions.
Okay.
Which the federal constitution talks about equal representation. Mm-hmm. The Kentucky constitution talks about dividing as few of counties as possible. So once you divide it, it doesn't matter how often you divide it. So the courts have always looked at it. So Laurel County, Pulaski County, particularly in House districts, once you divide it, you might as well break it up 5 or 6 times, because you have to comply with the federal of equal representation.
Given your experience and your service to Kentucky over all these years, why do you think that in this census the population gained so much in urban areas and lost so much in rural areas like those that you represent?
I think one of the biggest reasons is jobs. If you look where the job growth has taken place, that's where people move to. When we look at Congressman Rogers' district, his district has dropped by 53,000 people. Why? The jobs were lost primarily in the coal industry. So people moved to other places like Georgetown, Toyota, fastest growing county in the state above Lexington, Fayette, Jefferson, Boone, Kenton, and Campbell. Why? Because you're going to have 7,000 jobs at Toyota.
Are some counties now so small after this 2020 census that they are just not economically viable as county entities? You've got counties of less than 5,000, barely 7,000. Can a county realistically survive at those numbers?
They can survive, but it's tough. And I think Robertson County is probably the one that everybody looks at because I think it's less than 3,000. And it becomes very difficult to fund a school board and a county government when you have actually, there's almost as many people who live in the city of Manchester that live in the whole county of Robertson.
Both you and the governor have said that you think a special legislative session may be in order and may happen soon to address the pandemic emergency that's going on here in Kentucky and recent court rulings associated with that. Yet you're on record this week as also saying you think there should soon, and definitely before December, have another special session just to address redistricting. Why should this not wait until the regular session?
It will consume the regular session because what happens when we go into session, you just read off my district may change, and it's not of my desire, it's because we have to comply with the state and federal constitution. So it has to shift. I'm now 7,000 people below the minimal representation range. So I either have to pick up territory or change and modify territory. And so until I know who I'm representing, how do I advocate for their city, their county, their school boards, for roads, water, job creation? You don't know. And so you go halfway through the session and it's like, oh, now I have a totally new county, which has happened to me 3 times now that I've had totally new counties, and I've not been able to advocate for them. Basically, they've been voiceless through the session, which we are now going to do the budget. We'll probably have COVID responses. We'll have the ARPA funds that are on the table, and nobody will know who they represent till mid-session. We could do it now, so when we go in, everybody knows what the political landscape is and who their constituency are or is to represent. Naturally, you got the big state broad issues, but there are county, city, and school board specific issues that you don't know who you're representing until after redistricting is done.
So given that May 22nd, we're scheduled, or May 17th, I think it is next year, we're scheduled to have a primary election in a filing deadline of January, will that impact people's ability to know what they're running for?
Yes. If we don't go in until January to do redistricting, we'll have to change at the least the filing deadlines, but not just for state house, state senate, and congressional seats. We'll have to change it for school board seats, county judges, magistrates. The whole menu will have to be delayed.
So you're a Republican, and the Kentucky Republicans currently have a supermajority in the House and in the Senate. And this has caused some national news outlets to say that the U.S. Congressman John Yarmouth, who's a Democrat and in the congressional delegation from Kentucky, will now have his district redrawn so he can more easily be defeated. Is your goal for Republicans to control all the congressional seats?
My goal is to comply with the state and federal constitutions. And will Congressman Yarmouth's district be redrawn? Yes. But every other congressman's will be redrawn. That's what we have there. Will it be redrawn to try to beat him? No, it's going to be redrawn to comply with the state and federal constitution. Whatever that may be, it will be. But the one thing I want to avoid, and everybody else wants to avoid, is being sued in our official capacity, which I've had many times, and going to federal or state courts to litigate it and see what happens in the courts. That's actually been part of the problem here, is because the governor sued us with the COVID, sued us 6 months ago, and we've been waiting to see what the courts say about who has the authority to set policy. Same thing applies here. We don't want to wait 6 months to see who's going to be running where in the November elections of 2022.
So we're going to have to go through this redistricting process. How will the process work, and more importantly, who gets to participate?
The legislature.
Okay.
It's a legislative prerogative as to how we do it. It will have to be signed by the governor. We are having discussions, and we're not quite ready to have a special session or any session, because what we have is tiers of information. We have the gross data statewide, which you announced 4.5 million and some change. We have specific counties, but we do not have precinct A107 to know how many people live there. And that becomes critical in a Laurel County, a Pulaski County, a Fayette County, because those counties will have to be divided. Because you have, for 100 House seats, you will have 45,000 people that will be in a House district. More people live in Leslie County or Laurel County and Pulaski County, so you'll have multiple districts, so you need to know where those numbers are by precinct level, and we don't have those yet.
And when do you anticipate getting that data?
Hopefully by mid-September, but we are so far behind in this process, not due to anyone's fault, but because of the COVID circumstances.
Right.
We're almost a year behind.
Wow. So you said that you really want to avoid lawsuits over the redistricting, because obviously that would slow down the implementation process. Given that, do you think this procedure this time will be a little more transparent and more open, or do you think it will have to be done more quickly behind closed doors in Frankfort?
I think there's going to be hearings on this in both the House and the Senate. It's going to be the natural process of a bill. That a bill will be introduced, data will be sent out. The data is available to most anybody. All the data we have is available to any individual now, which nobody can get that, what I call the extreme granular data. It's going to be the normal process. Are we going to let an independent commission do this, or another group come in and say this is what the district should be? No, that's not going to happen. It's going to be a legislation-based plan.
What's the biggest challenge you face in redistricting this year?
There's
a lot of them.
There's a lot of them. We've the massive growth in certain areas where, when I came in, I'll give Bowling Green, Warren County, was a 2-county district. Now we're actually going to have to split Warren County because we have a deviation range to equal representation. And they are above the high end of the range, because what the courts have allowed us to do is 118,000 is a Senate district, the optimal number.
Okay.
Plus 5% or minus 5%. There's, in my career, Warren County has never been that big. Now they're 134,000, 10,000 people above the high end of the deviation range. We've got all those happening, and then you've got population loss, and how you have to put those together and not split counties becomes the hardest part in this.
So this becomes as much a math exercise, if not more so, than a political exercise. Is that correct?
That is really about as accurate as you can say. You've got to have 45,000 in the House, 118 in the Senate, plus or minus 5%, and not deviate from the state constitution any more than you have to not split counties. And then meet all the other federal criteria, such as the Voting Rights Act for minority populations. Those are certain things you have to look at, but it is as much mathematical as anything.
Senator, we wish you the best of luck with redistricting, and thank you for your time today. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Jay.